Welcome to Grant's Rock Warehouse and to This is Power Pop. I want to welcome SCHNEE to the show. Tonight we are going to look at the legendary Power Pop band 2020. So without any further ado, let's get this one started. SCHNEE, how are you? Nice to see you.
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me, Grant.
Welcome to the show. This is like an official welcome because you've not been on a show with me. I've been on your show.
You've been on my show, and I did appear on a panel on one of your shows.
That's right.
During a live stream.
Yep.
But you guys kicked me off.
Did we?
Not really. No, I'm kidding.
We wouldn't do that. We were glad to have you. It was fun.
Yeah, totally fun.
But
I love talking pop shop.
I know. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
We can shoot the proverbial shit, so to speak.
And we're going to be talking about one of the finest bands. One of the finest, they actually started in different area, but one of the finest LA power pop bands of our generation. That's right. We are talking about
2020.
2020.
Which virtually, who knows 2020 now, you know?
Actually, the power pop kids, 2020 is legendary amongst the power pop kids.
Right. Right.
It should be much more than that. I was talking to somebody last night, and I think in my opinion, the three best power pop albums of all time, in my opinion.
Go ahead.
2020.
Yep.
The Beat debut album.
I agree.
And the Rubinoos, Back to the Drawing Board, their second album. Incredible. And I told this my friend that I was talking to, she had not heard 2020. And I said, she said, well, Cheap Trick is power pop too, right? I said, yeah. I said, Cheap Trick doesn't sound, 2020 doesn't sound like Cheap Trick, nor do they sound like the Rubinoos or the Beat, but they're somewhere in between. Mm-hmm. And it depends on which day it is that I'm going to put my favorite power pop at number one. And it's usually, it's one of those three. So it's like a rotating three. Today it's going to be 2020. For the next 3 months, it could be 2020. Then it switches back to the Beat. Then it switches to the Rubinoos. But yeah, 2020 is pretty incredible.
I would have to add the Knack's first album to that too.
Yes, I really dig the Knack's first album, but I think that, in my opinion, the other three are better. But the Knack is an incredible. The first three Knack albums are amazing.
Yeah. But that first album, though, Let Me Out. I know we're not talking about the Knack, but they were all around in the same period. I mean, they were all playing the same gigs. They were all out. This was that era in the early 80s where, 2020 is late 79. The Knack's first album is late 79. I mean, all that era, all these bands were out playing in LA. So they were all, it was that time. Mm-hmm. But that first 2020 album, I have to agree, is power pop perfection. The sequencing of the record, the songwriting, the production. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, if you transplant yourself back in 79, all of those could have easily been hits, I think. I don't know.
Well, here in LA, when that first, there's Lynn. I was just talking about Lynn right now. She.
I forgot we have people here.
Lynn was the person I was talking to last night about 2020, she's a regular ski lodge attendee, and
I've seen her on the ski lodge. Okay, okay.
But anyway, with the 2020, it's just one of those albums that it's timeless. It's an album that when it came out, its influences were coming from the 60s. So, they weren't making an album for 1979. They were just making a great album filled with great songs. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about it is they created an album that still today, if you turn on Sherry or Yellow Pills or Tonight We Fly or Jet Lag or any, Backyard Guys, if you put on any of those songs, they're still going to sound fresh.
Right.
And, the thing is I missed 2020 when the first single came out. I think it might've been on Bump.
Yeah, I think it was on Bump.
And it was Giving It All. And great tune, but I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. And I remember going into Licorice Pizza in 1979. I'd been into this new wave power pop thing since about early 78. And so here it was, 1979. And I see this album and I just go, these guys look cool. And I took my probably Jack in the Box money and I bought it. Or it could have been my allowance. I used to buy albums just because it looked cool. And then I took it home and everything fit together. I mean, you got Steve Allen on guitar and vocals. You got Ron Flint on guitar and vocals. You've got Mike Gallo on drums. Those were like the three original core members. Those are Mike Gallo left the band, I think, partway through this album or right before it was released. Phil Seymour, actually, I believe.
Phil Seymour played most of the drums on it. Yeah.
But Mike Gallo was an important part of the band. I think he even named the band, but he was the guy that, he was probably the guy that like went to the Mimeo machine and made all the flyers. And
he did all the work.
Yeah. No, but I know that Steve and Ron were like big, obviously big parts of that too, right, because they were like the main singer-songwriters. Incredible. All three of those guys, incredibly talented. Then they bring in Chris Saud, which I still don't know how to pronounce his last name. I've tried a million times to remember how to pronounce Chris' last name.
Salagi?
Yeah, Salagi. It could be Salagi.
Looks like Salagi to me.
Yeah. In the future, if Chris or any of his former bandmates or family members read this, I apologize for not being able to say the name. I'll just say Chris.
Words are hard and names are very hard.
Yeah. But I remember taking that album home and not knowing what to expect, when you hear The Sky Is Falling, that sort of weird sound effect and keyboard thing at the beginning. And I'm thinking, I don't know what to expect here, but this isn't what I expected. But then when you hear Ron's count in the 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, then the album starts and it's a non-stop. It's just absolutely incredible. I mean, everything about that album. I think Earl Mankey produced it, right?
Yeah, he wasn't there for the second record.
Right. Richard Podolor did the second record. Mm-hmm. But it was just absolutely incredible. It blew my mind. And in LA, Yellow Pills got a lot of airplay on the radio. Yellow Pills became a standard on KROQ, the radio station. You heard it a lot, which was strange because Sherry was the single. Now, Yellow Pills may have been a single, but I never saw Yellow Pills as a single, but I saw Sherry as a single. Now, Yellow Pills, it inspired Jordan Oakes' fanzine by the name of Yellow Pills, which is now legendary. And it inspired so many people, in LA, Orange County and elsewhere to follow, to check out more of these bands that were, the same thing that the Knack did, on a sort of more of a global level. 2020 inspired a bunch of people to come in and just check out this great, wonderful pop music. And, I was already into that scene at that time. So this was just a band that, any mixtape that I made always had to have a Yellow Pill song on, or a 2020 song on it. Mm-hmm. And it was usually Yellow Pills or Tell Me Why. I have a story about Tell Me Why that I'll tell you later.
Yeah, the flip, you mentioned Yellow Pills there. Mm-hmm. As a single. It was the flip side of Tell Me Why. Oh, it was out as a single. Okay. Kinda.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, Tell Me Why is, oh my God.
That's a great song. The whole record's great.
I remember, like I said, the first time I heard it, and it was like, if somebody came in the room, hey, Steven, Mom wants you to take out the trash, I'd be with the headphones on, go, shh, 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 wait. And just absolutely incredible. Every time you played that record, it was, so many avenues to explore in terms of, was there a lot of layers to those records? Maybe, but there's also emotional layers to the record depending on what your mood is. And that's the great thing about listening to music is, if you are in a down mood, it's going to lift you up. If you are in a good mood, it's just going to make the day better. 2020 is an album that is just absolutely incredible, and it is available on CD, by the way.
There it is.
Now, this did come out on Oleo Records originally, and it was just the 2 albums. And I always wondered, well, that's kind of weird. But and there's also a little glitch. If anybody out there has the Oleo Records, check it out. Little glitch during Nuclear Boy off the second album, like about 10, 15 seconds in, there's like a little click. That was, something that was either on the tape or on the pressing. And you don't notice it unless you're a nerd like me who listens in the headphones all the time. And I still recommend you to find that CD because this is now out of print.
Yeah. Well, I found this used at Half Price Books for $5.99 like a couple of years ago. Believe it or not.
That's incredible. Even the band wasn't able to get a hold of stuff like this. I expected just the company to send them a box of 30 or something, but that's just not the way it works. But actually, I don't like to toot my own horn.
Toot your horn.
No, I'm not going to.
All right, don't toot it then.
But I'm going to.
Do it.
I actually went to Real Gone Music and said, hey, the Oleo Records one is out of print. Maybe you can reissue this. And there's 2. They put out a 7-inch single, A Strange Side of Love. And on that 7-inch single was 2 non-album B-sides. So I took the Oleo disc and I saw, you can fit the 2 songs on it. And so I suggested it to them. They went to the label and the label approved it. So they came to me and I got to write the liner notes. And also I'm given some other kind of credit on the back cover. But I'm not touting this because my name's on it and I wrote the liner notes. I'm touting it because these are 2 of the finest records of the era. Mm-hmm. And that just, if you go to Yellow Pills, like I said, that's a perennial favorite. Backyard Guys, Action Now, and so many it's just an amazing record. Jet Lag's one of my favorites. Leaving Your World Behind.
Yeah. It's just power pop perfection. I don't know what more to add.
Mm-hmm.
If you were going to, I already know what you would say. Normally when we do these shows, I always ask the guest or whatever, well, if you're going to rate this out of 10, what would you rate this? And I'm sure you'd rate this 10 out of 10.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at that second album, which we lost, Earl's not producing on that one.
Right. Richard Podelor did that, who produced the Phil Seymour albums, I think.
I don't know if even Phil's on the second one. I doubt it.
They've
got their drummer. Who was it?
Joel Terisi.
Okay, yeah, Joel was finally in the band then. So,
mm-hmm.
But when you look at the reviews, virtually, if you're looking on the internet and you're trying to find any information about, let me throw up the graphic while I'm here, since I'm talking about it briefly. We're going to just kind of go all over here, kids. There's the record. This is a photo of the second album, Lookout. Seriously, if you go on the internet and you just browse and try to find information about 2020's second album, there's virtually not anything out there about it.
I love this record. Nuclear Boy was a hit song on KROQ, got a lot of airplay. But you see, like maybe in the early days, I would be more likely to, when I say early days, I'm talking, in my teens and early 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I was always the guy comparing albums. Like, well, gosh, Split Enz Time and Tide isn't as good as True Colors or, whatever. But I got over that pretty quick, because how can you possibly say Abbey Road is better than Sgt. Pepper, or Abbey Road's better than the White Album? Now, people are going to think that, but I don't compare albums like that anymore. So I look at the first 2020 album as one thing. Then I look at Lookout as a completely other thing. It's different producer, different chemistry. Mike Gallow's out. Joel Torrisi is in. And I think it's just a fantastic record, but it has a different mood. Halfway through the album, John Lennon died. So it changed the mood, and it's less. The first album was very, very dominated by British influences. The second album, they were allowing their own personalities to show. And that's why, it's a different record, different mindset, but still great songs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if Earl Mankey had produced the album, it may have sounded different, but it was going to be that batch of songs. And I know that some people say, oh yeah, it's nothing compared to the first album, but don't compare it to the first album. It's a great pop album. If that had been the first album, people would be nuts for it.
Right. I try to, at least by doing all these, since this channel's only been around for 8 months, but I try to look at, every time we look at an artist and we look at their catalog of music, I always try to look at the records on an individual basis.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do, Steve, because we naturally compare the body of work of an artist.
Yes.
And it's hard to look at records because, all right, I'm just going to throw out Queen for an example.
Mm-hmm.
You've got jazz, and then you go to, The Game, which The Game is a little bit, that's where the cracks started to form, in my opinion. And you get to Hot Space. You might like Hot Space, but you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think they ever recovered. But it's hard, and we're doing the reason I mentioned Queen is we're doing a Queen series on my friend Ryan's channel. So we're getting ready to go into that 80s period now.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think it is important that you try to look at these records without comparing to what came before, and look at the record as it stands on its own. But it's hard to do. If you look at Lookout as it stands on its own, I think it's damn near as strong as the first album.
Yeah. I mean, I love Lookout. And I don't understand why people. I mean, I think like this right here. If anybody is into just great pop, new wave, power pop, this right here is a must-have for every collection, because the albums are totally strong. They're filled. This is one of the things where I can look down. And apart from the sky's falling, I don't remember the melody to that, but. But
yeah,
I can just, in my head, just look at each song title and sing it in my head. Sometimes I can't do that with some of the other albums that I love. It's like, oh, I forgot about that one because I don't listen to it as much, whatever. These were constantly on my turntable. And back in the day, yes, I used to have records. And yes, I am a CD junkie now. So that's why I have this on CD with bonus tracks.
Yeah.
And that second album, but again, if you take every album by every band and take it for what was going on at the time, 2020, the guys, Steve Allen, Ron Flint, Joel Torrisi, Chris, were not trying to make the first album again. And they'd already probably toured all around, played all around. They'd experienced the highs, the lows, and then they're thrown in the studio, different producer, different vibe of the album. And they came out on top with that record. A lot of people are going to say, well, yeah, it's not that old power pop sound. It's like, yeah, but it is. It
is. It just sounds a bit different, but it's still power pop.
Yeah.
Do you think, because this came out in 81 and the first record came out in 79, do you think there was too much of a lull in between? People might have forgotten 2020 between that time period, but I don't think that first album really sold anything as far as I know.
in my opinion, in those days, 2 year space was, but I didn't go back. I should have done this before I got on and looked at Wikipedia because 79, it could have come out in the end of 79, and the second album could have come out at the beginning of 81, which means it was just a little over a year.
Yeah, Wikipedia does not have that info like normally it does. There's like I said, it's hard to get any info on 2020.
Well, I saw between albums, I saw 2020 live at the. I saw them a few times actually, but I saw them live the first time at the the Golden Bear in Huntington Beach, and it was this nice little venue right on basically across the street was Huntington Beach. You look out at the ocean, and they did songs off the first album. They're great live, by the way, but also they were doing songs that were going to be on their second album. But second album does not or had not been either recorded yet, or it certainly wasn't released. So here's a little bit of information for you. That's first off. Now I know I've mentioned this to Steve and Ron many times, that they did a song called "I Want to Hurt Her." Now, of course, when you think of that song now, it's like, oh no, I think it was about emotional. He didn't want to actually physically.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to put that out now, but
yeah, but it was a great song, and I can still remember how good it was in my head. Just it was a great song, but it never got released. They did a song called "Life in the CIA," and they put on sunglasses and they played it. And they "Life in the CIA." That album or that song became "Life in the USA" on the album. They totally changed the lyrics, and it became something else. And it was such an incredible sound for these four guys up on stage making this wonderful music. And I know that I think they did "Strange Side of Love" at that point too. I thought that they were singing "Strange Kind of Love," but maybe that was the original title, and then they changed it on the record or whatever. Mm-hmm. But just fantastic songs all around. And then after the second album came out, which I loved, like I said, in fact, I know KROQ. I'll tell you for sure that KROQ played "Yellow Pills" off the first album. They might have played "Remember the Lightning" and "Tonight We Fly," "She's an Obsession," but that was about it. The second album, I think they only played "Nuclear Boy," but they played that a lot. And I don't think that there was anything else that they really focused on too much. By the way, the CD that I'm talking about, it does add those two non-album B-sides at the end that were the B-sides of "Strange Side of Love." Anyway, the songs of there's so many great things on Lookout, like "The Night I Heard a Scream," those harmonies that Steve and Ron do, just incredible.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the harmonies, but not only that, but the guitar work on these records.
Yeah.
This band was tight, very accomplished. I mean, I don't know. What can you say? They were just top-notch power pop band. Or just a band in general, Steve. I'm just saying,
See, that's the thing about power pop. Mm-hmm. And you can talk to any band. We're talking Shoes, Rubinoos, any band, and they're going to tell you pretty much right off that they're not power pop. I mean, they're not, even though we all call them power pop, that's kind of like, what do you call it? Like an albatross, around their neck. It's both a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing because they've got the support of the power pop community. It's a curse because people outside the power pop community go like, power pop, whatever.
I don't like that.
Yeah, and they blow it off. I remember Nuke the Knack. By the time the second Knack album came out, they were just being lambasted. So not only did the Knack raise power pop to a certain level with their debut album, they also brought it back down with "But the Little Girls Understand," which is an incredible record.
It's a great record.
Yeah.
I mean, all those Knack songs, those were all part of their set. They just happened to pick all those for the first album And then, you know, they were playing all those in the clubs, you know. It's not like it was, oh, the second album's horrible. It's more the first, you know.
I heard or read somewhere that they were actually contemplating doing a 2-record album as their debut. I mean, they were going to go balls out. And both of those albums were going to be combined into one. I don't know if that's true.
I've never heard that, but
that could be somebody's pipe dream. But even like the Knack Round Trip, incredible record.
My favorite Knack album.
Yeah, me too. But you know, I mean, going back to 2020, it's sometimes there are albums that I'm baffled at that that never took off, that were never commercially successful. Both of the 2020 albums were. Like, you know, you could say that about every one of your bands, you know, every one of your favorite bands. Oh, I love this band. They should have been top 10, whatever. Both 2020 albums, you know, we're just talking about the two albums, you know, the first two albums right now.
Right.
Because they were released on Portrait, you know, major label. So both of those albums had enough songs that could have got played on top 40 radio, like nationwide or even international. But there was just something in the water. People paid attention to the Knack. They signed a bunch of these bands. And I don't think that the labels put a lot of, you know, money or muscle behind promoting these records nationally. Because, you know, because every label had to have their own Knack. You know, that's the way the business goes. You know, when you know, I mean, it's happening now. Like, let's say with K-pop, every label has to have their K-pop band or something similar to that. You know, everybody has to have their Snoop Dogg. Everybody has to have their, you know, whoever else has been popular in the last 75 years. You know, every label wanted to capitalize. There were so many great bands that came out in the wake of the Knack. 2020 was one of them, but 2020 was around. They didn't form and then put out a record because of the Knack. They just got interest because of the Knack. And that's a big difference between a lot of stuff. Like when synth pop became big, all of a sudden everyone started putting down their guitars and then playing synth pop because Soft Cell and Human League were popular. And, but with 2020 and some of the bands like The Last, LA Explosion, which is another incredible record that came out actually before this. These are albums that still hold up today because they were not influenced by anything except this scene going on that was heavily influenced by 60s pop. And when I say 60s pop, I mean the Kinks, Who, Beatles, stuff like that. I don't mean, you know, Fabian and you know, people like that. You know, I'm talking about, you know, the rock bands. But it's just incredible, amazing.
I mean, just like you said, when the Beatles hit, everybody tried to find the next Beatles and everybody signed everybody. You know, the Kinks got signed, you know, Rolling Stones were all brought in. And it's the same thing. But when the Knack came out, because I distinctly remember hearing the Knack, My Sharona in 1979. And as a kid, it was like, you know, the seas parting. It was like I'd never heard anything like it. The first thing I thought, because I was a big Beatles fan, I went, oh my God, this is something that's along the lines of the Beatles.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not comparing the Knack to the Beatles. That's going to upset a lot of people. And of course, that upset a lot of people then.
Yeah.
But when you look at the context of 1979, disco and all that coming across, and My Sharona, of all things, comes over the airwaves, and you're a kid and you think the Beatles are God's gift, it just was like one of those things. And I can see how these record companies could look at this and go, oh my God, My Sharona just took off overnight. And you couldn't escape it. They probably overplayed it to some degree during that era. But yeah, they're going to sign 2020. They're going to try to get their own Knack to these labels. But I just don't know. I mean, the Knack, I remember that they pushed it. There was some promo stuff. I don't remember any kind of promotion for 2020. Do you remember seeing anything? Or, I mean, did they just put them out and let them, all right, boys, have at it. Good luck.
Yeah, I think the way that record companies tend to work is, you know, they'll put some kind of money behind it, like maybe that pre-release push or something. And if radio stations aren't picking it up, then they're going to go, oh, you know what? Radio stations aren't picking this up, but they are playing that Loverboy. So let's go focus on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then all their attention is going to go. Story that I had heard about Badfinger. They put out the album "Say No More" in 1981, I think, and it was Tommy and Joey. It was the most power pop album in their catalog. It was the most directly pure power pop. Oh, look at it! I'm wearing my Badfinger shirt too.
Oh my God! Look at look at you.
A quinky dunk.
A quinky dunk.
And that record is, I think, the most immediately power pop, most upfront power pop album of their career. That album came out, and the song "Hold On," I think actually got either close to or just entered the top 40. Mm-hmm. And then the same label, all of a sudden, oh, Stars on 45 is taking off. Let's put all of our attention over there. And they dropped all the focus on Badfinger, and that album just dived.
Well, you heard the story. What was it? What band was it? But I heard it, I don't know when. It might have been, I'm just going to say it was one of those hair metal bands. And I know the hair metal bands don't want to be called hair metal bands. But to put it in context, it's the same thing. Power pop bands don't want to be called power pop bands. Mm-hmm. Puts them in you're putting Baby in a corner.
Yeah.
But this band, I think it was Warrant. Okay, anyway, they went up to their, offices at the record company, and they saw a big Nirvana poster. Mm-hmm. And right then they knew there was something. They said, well, boys, we're not going to promote your next record because we're putting all our money over here.
Yeah.
Or something. And that, same thing. Mm-hmm. When I first heard the Knack, that was a big moment. And I remember when Nirvana came out and I heard Smells Like Teen Spirit. Mm-hmm. And that virtually overnight, I remember it distinctly. Mm-hmm. Everything had changed. Mm-hmm. But Smells Like Teen Spirit came out, and that was like something, considering what was out at the time, all that hair metal stuff, it was a breath of fresh air.
Absolutely.
Now, whether you someone likes Nirvana or not, it changed everything. And virtually overnight, Skid Row, Warrant, they were doomed.
Yeah,
they were doomed.
Absolutely.
Everything changed. And, record companies want to go with the next big thing,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just don't know why I don't know. You think they'd want to compete with the Knack, that Portrait, but Portrait's not a great big label. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what, CBS?
Yeah, it's part of Sony CBS, yeah.
I would think that, I don't know, Steve. I don't know. It seems weird.
I think that like Portrait, I don't believe that they were known at the time for new wave artists and punk and power pop and things like that. So I think that 2020 was like a fresh thing for them. So they thought, here, let's give this band a shot. I forgot who else was on Portrait. Was Heart on Portrait?
Yeah, they were on Portrait.
I mean, I know they were on Mushroom before they signed us, but so I think at that time Heart may have still been selling records. So then they go, oh well, Heart's got a new record. Let's focus on that. I don't know, but whatever it was, 2020 deserved the promotion because it was a strong record.
Burton Cummings,
on both of
Burton Cummings, Saga, Heart, Cyndi Lauper, Eddie Grant, Bill Nelson, Sade, Toya.
A lot of that stuff was after 2020. Yeah.
But Heart, that was at their end of their run. At that point, they're going, well, you've got Private Audition. I think that's 80, 81. They were, they were about done. Yeah.
Yeah. And but it's hard to say why certain albums don't, I mean, us being fans of a particular genre, us being fans of a particular style of music or styles, I'm far more varied than power pop. I mean, remember, I'm a big fan of melodic punk. I'm not, not oi and all that kind of stuff. And I'm also a big fan of Andy Williams and Johnny Mathis and the Partridge Family and the Osmonds and the Jackson 5. And then I'm a fan of 2020 and the Knack and the Last and the Beat and Gene Loves Jezebel, and things like this. So it's all very different. And unfortunately, by the time new wave and power pop and stuff, music had or radio started becoming a little bit more segregated. So you weren't, back before then. I mean, how old are you, Grant?
57.
Okay, so you're only 2 hours or 2 hours, 2 years behind me. So you're going to understand this. In the 70s, you can hear Kenny Rogers in the first edition, followed by the Commodores, followed by Anne Murray, followed by Paul McCartney. So you can hear that on Top 40 radio. But it started moving away to where, like, okay, the punk and new wave was over here, and FM, classic rock, AOR, whatever you want to call it, that started getting segregated from all this. So then all of a sudden, Top 40 was just Top 40. So you were going to find, you knew that certain artists were always going to be in the Top 40. You were still going to have different genres standing next to each other, like Pointer Sisters and John Mellencamp. They were going to be on the same chart, but it wasn't as diverse and inclusive as it had been in previous years. And that's, radio stations radio stations and labels were still run by people who were our age back then. So, they didn't want to pay attention to the kids. So this was just kids' music to some of these people. They didn't see the life and the energy and the electricity and the fire in this music like we did. They just saw it as a flash in the pan, not to be confused with the group Flash in the Pan or Flash in the Pan. But yeah, these two 2020 records are just astonishingly wonderful.
What would you give I know we've been going on.
Yeah.
It's fine. This is what we do. No,
yeah.
This is what we do on this channel. It's just all about having a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're looking at 2020, but we're just, talking. Yeah. But just to come back just a little bit, we give the first album a 10 out of 10. What would you give Lookout? 10 out of 10?
9.5.
9.5. I agree. I'd probably give it a 9. I think it's right up there. I think if it had Earl's production, I think that would have opened it up a little bit more. But we don't have Earl. See there, I'm doing it. I'm comparing it to what came before. Well, it might open it up a little bit more because I really like what Earl did with the first album. I think that album sounds great. I was listening to that today with the headphones on, and it's just glorious. The mix, everything.
Yeah. See, I think what Earl did is 2020 sound on the first album was like that. And what Podolor did is he sort of brought everything in tighter. So sometimes, like during the singing, you wouldn't hear a guitar line or whatever. But then there were certain songs like Nuclear Boy where the vocals are, both channels. And it's like, whoa. And Not I Heard a Scream, the vocals start. And I think that he brought out their vocals more, but kind of hid Steve Allen's a great guitar player. In fact, when I interviewed them for the liner notes, like I'd already submitted the liner notes, whatever, but Ron had come to me, via email or something like that. He says, "Oh, if you can get this in, I just want to say that, without Steve, who's an amazing guitar player, he was really the great musician behind the band and really this force, I think especially on Lookout. And when you go back and listen to the music, then you're reminded about, what a great guitar player he is, what great songwriters they are. Yeah. I mean, I can't say enough great things. I'm still looking for a freaking 2020 shirt that just says 2020 and I can't find anything.
You're probably never going to find one. You're going to have to make your own.
I know.
Let me ask you this. After they did Lookout, I just switched albums because we looked at Lookout for a long time.
Yeah.
But after they did Lookout, do you know, I don't know if you know this. You may know this because you've talked to the band. Okay, we're going to get to that. Did they just have a 2-album deal with Portrait or were they dropped? Do you know?
That's a good question. I have a feeling that it might have been a 2-album deal. And the reason why I say that is a lot of bands at that time, the Electrics, Hawks, 4 to 5 Doctors, all these great bands that came out with albums at that time. It was all 2 albums and gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting because just like 2020, every one of these bands, the first albums and second albums were different.
Mm-hmm.
They were different from each other. And in some of the cases, like let's say Tom Dickey and the Desires, who had the 2 albums, the second album, right? But the first album was really good. But most of them, Hawks, like I said, 4 to 5 Doctors, other bands from the period. Of course, I'm sure that as soon as the show's over, I'm going to remember 37
Yeah, that's okay.
other different bands.
Yeah, of course, that's how it works.
Yeah. But they all had albums that were very diverse from each other, and they seemed to be getting better. So you're going, oh, I can't wait to see what they come up with next. Right. And next was a big surprise because they broke up. So
what, let's touch on that third record real quick. Now I haven't heard the third record, so I'm going to have you fill in all the blanks. So they get dropped from Portrait. They either got dropped or their contract expired. Mm-hmm. They lost a member. They were down to a 3-piece on this record.
They lost 2 members. Two members. They lost Chris and Joel Teresi were gone. And there was a drummer here. I think it was Dean North or Dean Koth or something like that. He played drums, and it was an indie album. And it was definitely a return to the indie sound, like Giving It All or whatever. No more big, major label production.
Right.
Yeah. And it's certainly not as strong as the first 2 albums.
Well, I looked at the Trouser Press record guide. They did not think very highly of that record at all. They said the songwriting, no good songs on it, production. They were not a fan. I don't know I'm just curious what your thoughts are on it. You said it's not quite as strong.
Yes, I'd say this is probably a 6 out of 10.
So when you listen to that, what is taking it away from it? Is it the production? Is it the songwriting? What is missing that those other records have that this doesn't?
It's the production. See, the album came out in 82. Mm-hmm. And then it was reissued in 83. And they had gone in and they had remixed a couple songs, and they added another song called Jack's Got a Problem, and which may or may not be about Jack Lee from the Nerves. And of course, thanks, John. John Borak, my buddy John Borak.
Crap, I'm not paying attention to the comments. I'm not a very good host.
Yeah, he says Dean Korth. So I was saying Dean Koth or Dean North.
999. So, yeah, well, I was up to 1,000.
But he
Korth,
says,
okay.
Yeah. So I said either Dean North or Dean Koth. So it was somewhere in between. So thank you, John. But this album, I don't think is like, if you heard it, you'd go, oh, that's Steve Allen and Ron Flint. I don't think it's that great of an album. For being a fan, it does have some great songs. I think that Jack's Got a Problem is a great song. I think that Sex Trap, the title track, Fast Car is a great song. And Haunted People is another great song. This sounds like what 2020 would have done like before the first album, if they had come out with an album then, without the big production. And I wish that they had waited like another year to have a couple other great songs. But it's if you're reading that it's bad, it's not a bad album. It's just not the first 2 albums. Like I said, I don't want to compare it,
Mm-hmm.
So Rich has Sex Shop. Like I said, the first version came out, and I think it was the blue, which is this. And then when it was reissued, it was red lettering. And, but this CD version, which I think came out on Airmail, maybe, this CD version actually adds as bonus tracks the songs that were added to the, this has, the original track listing, and then it adds bonus tracks that aren't listed, which I think Jack's Got a Problem. I could be wrong there. I should have checked again.
That's all right.
Yeah, John Borek might know. But I recommend it because it's a snapshot in time, and I totally accept it for what it's for what it is. And there are great songs on this album. If you're reading Trouser Press, they're probably comparing it to the first two albums, which is unfair because it's a whole different circumstances. Remember, every album that we listen to is based on that band or that artist or that songwriter's life at that time. So Bruce Springsteen recording Born in the USA was a completely different Bruce Springsteen that recorded Wild Innocent, the East Street Shuffle. Completely different place, and that's why I think Fast Car is a great song. In fact, let me tell you a little bit here.
4-Day Tornado. Welcome Return to Form.
4-Day Tornado. I think this came out like 97, 98 or something, maybe 95. And it was Ron and Steve and a drummer by the name of Bill Belknap. And they flew in and they recorded the album in 4 days. And this isn't 2020 from 1979. It isn't 2020 from 1981, or it isn't 2020 from 1982. This is 2020 from the mid to late 90s. Mm-hmm. Mature. They were writing different kinds of songs, and they weren't trying to ape the old sound. It was two friends coming together and recording an album together, and some great songs on this album. And definitely, if you want the first album, buy the first album. But if you want to hear Steve Allen and Ron Flint for who they are as growing artists and songwriters, definitely that's one to listen to. They also put out an album, I think I wish I had the...
I'm looking. Interstate?
Yeah, Interstate.
1998.
Okay, 98.
Yeah.
So
Olio.
This, I think, is actually a better record than 4-Day Tornado.
Really?
And I really like 4-Day Tornado. Interstate is... but it's I guess you could say Americana rootsy. It's closer to that than it is to power pop, but they're still great songs, inventive arrangements, great harmonies. They're still doing great stuff, but they're doing it in a whole different way. They're not trying to be 2020 from, 20 years prior.
Yeah. What would you, those two later records, Interstate and what was the other one? Help me.
4-Day Tornado.
What would you rate those? Because I've never heard them, but I'm looking at them on Discogs, and I'm like, if you give them a good rating, maybe I always spend money on these shows.
Yeah, I know. I would say 4-Day Tornado is probably a 7, mm-hmm. and Interstate's an 8.
Wow.
Okay. But again, you can't you can compare these albums to each other because this was Ron and Steve in this time in their life. Remember. Mm-hmm. I don't know anything about their personal lives in terms of, whether they have kids or not, mm-hmm. or whatever, but it's 20 years later. You can't expect them to be who they were. And I, myself, and, a lot of people are totally able to, accept that, so if the Beatles ever got back together again, then they would have been, let's say they got back together in 75. They would have been completely different artists. Yeah. And, it probably would have ended up sounding like Ringo's Rotogravure, which isn't really that popular.
Well, Paul McCartney in 75 sounded pretty damn good though.
Oh, I loved John and Paul during that period, mm-hmm. But no, I guess John really wasn't doing anything except cover versions.
No, I know we're going on a tangent, but that John Lennon, I like Paul McCartney stuff. Don't get me wrong. But the John Lennon stuff, I just can't handle that Phil Spector production. It just sounds like...
Well, Spector wasn't producing him on things like Mind Games, Walls and Bridges, but John was producing it, and it was very poorly produced.
Yeah. He liked what Phil did. I think he was just trying to mimic Phil, and I just can't stand the production.
In the early 2000s, they did remixes of mm-hmm. those albums, and those are now out of print. So you're going to have to search for them. They're not too expensive on the market, but they actually sound better. They actually do. So,
well, they needed a remix. I'll give you that.
So whatever get you through the night isn't all this like, oh my God, I got to take the headphones off. It's just this loud jumble of noise. But here's the thing: comparing the Beatles to 2020 to the Beatles.
Okay.
There are people out there now. I'm not comparing 2020 to the Beatles, but there are people who consider 2020 their Beatles. This is the band that woke them up to new sounds. This is a band that, again, I am not comparing them musically to the Beatles. I think that 2020 is fabulous, and I think that there are many bands along the way that opened people's minds. Human League Dare might have opened up a lot of people to a whole new style of music. Yeah. So, in that sense, the Beatles is when they first came out, especially in America, it's a whole different time. Kennedy had been assassinated and all this stuff was happening. And then, when 2020 came around, there wasn't like that much of a tragedy going on, but the world was completely different. And then a band like 2020 comes along and they're just playing music. People are going to go, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I need. And that's why I think that, radio should have picked up on it more.
I just don't get it, because they picked up on the knack. At least they did for, Good Girls Don't, Baby Talks Dirty, and My Sharona. And My Sharona, like I said, it was like a breath of fresh air when I heard it.
Yeah.
And I would have thought that 2020 would have been in the same boat. But it never was meant to be, I guess, But
yeah.
Whatever.
But I mean, before we start wrapping things up, I don't know if you know this or not, but both Ron and Steve have solo albums.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Now Ron's got a couple, like of course I misplace everything, so I have one here called 12 Strings and Tambourines. And he's got another one that he recorded with Ron Flint and the either the Big Blue Hearts or the Blue Hearts, which is a great record if you love Americana. Melodic Americana, just wonderful, wonderful. And Steve has a couple albums out that I'm going to be doing a CD Junkie video at some point. And I'm going to cover the 2020 albums and their solo. But something that might be of interest to some people is Ron put out an album called LA Story. Now this is available physically, and it was just reissued like 2 years ago digitally, like expanded, but not on CD. And this kind of is, I don't want to say it's a concept album, but it's almost a concept album of his time in LA during the 2020 years. So,
that might be interesting. I'll have to check that out.
Yeah. So it's and like I said, Steve Allen has a couple albums out. There's at least one other Ron album out. Maybe they're recording, I've heard rumors, another thing about 2020, and I'm sorry I dominate. I know people complain because
no, it's good. You have much more 2020 knowledge than I do, and it's fine. You, Stephen, you do you.
Well, I'm looking forward to the negative comments after this goes
out.
But the interesting thing is 2020 we're going to do a reunion show, and they're going to play LA. And that was in 2020. And I think it was early 2020, March or something like that. It was going to be like their 40th anniversary thing, 40th anniversary of the, release of the first album. And COVID came along and ruined that. Everything shut down. So Steve Allen contacted me and he said, hey, do you want to do a video interview with us? And we'll post it the night that show was supposed to happen. And that same night, we'll also post the day, it wasn't on YouTube at the time, but they were going to post their appearance on American Bandstand, which I'd never seen up to that point.
I just watched that today, by the way.
So they posted it, and they posted the interview that I did. And that was the first Zoom interview I did, which led to 3 years of Zoom interviews that I've done ever since. That was the thing that made me realize that, I don't have to just sit here and go, oh, look, I'm the CD junkie. Look at my CDs. I can actually get artists up to talk to them, just like we're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
So Steve and Ron were still inspiring me, 40 years after I first heard their record. And to this day, super talented guys. Steve is in a band called the Long Players. And this is a band that includes like a bunch of people from, I think, the Nashville area. So it's got like Bill Lloyd, and lots of luminaries from that era or area, and they get together and they'll play albums. So it'll be like I don't think they did this, but they'll rehearse for a month and they'll have guests come in and sing. Let's say they're going to do Jackson Browne Running on Empty album, and they go in and they rehearse the music perfectly, and then they have different people come and do the vocals. So so that's what Steve Allen is involved with. Ron runs his studio. He has a studio, I think, in Austin, and he produced a lot of people. And I heard through them, I think, that there was going to be more 2020 music. There was a vinyl that was supposed to come out. John Borak, if you're still here, you might be able to help me on this. But there was supposed to be a collection of pre-first album demos that was going to come out. Now, those have been circulating for years, and but really piss poor quality. And supposedly a label was going to be a label put out a single, and I think that they were going to think that they were going to put it out on LP, but it never came out. Like the label folded before it happened or whatever. Just fantastic, wonderful music that still remains unheard.
How did you hear all that stuff? Bootlegs?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, bootleg cassettes. I never heard it on vinyl. It was always like 27th generation. It's like Steve Allen gave the tape to Joe Schmo. Joe Schmo copied it and gave that copy to somebody. Mm-hmm. Then it just, so you're talking a lot of hits. And plus it was demos. It was, them just, laying down stuff quickly and then mixing it down and putting it on a cassette. Mm-hmm. So, but still it's the magic. Yeah. And, and that's ultimately the thing about music is it's magic. These guys, would Steve Allen and Doug Feiger have worked in the same, would that have gelled if Steve Allen and Doug Feiger or Ron Flint and Doug Feiger, it would have been cool to just see him do like an acoustic set at the Troubadour or something. But I don't think that they would have worked in the same band. I think Steve and Ron had to be together, and Mike Gallo had to be there at the beginning, and Chris had to be there. When that first album came out, and it's all about chemistry. And I think that's another reason why the second album sounds different is because Gallo's out, and you're taking a piece of that puzzle. Mm-hmm. So it's still a wonderful puzzle. Sure. It's still great. It sounds great, stuff like that, but it's missing that one piece, and you've replaced it with another piece that fits perfectly, but it's from a different puzzle. Yeah. I wonder if that works. I wonder if you can go grab like two puzzles from the same company and put them together and have it be half and half, and they'll all be the same.
I wonder if they use the same pattern when they cut.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. You know what?
They do.
This show is about 2020, and now we've opened up a whole new.
We went into puzzles.
Yeah, exactly. Let's talk about puzzles for the next hour.
But yeah, so I think we accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. We just wanted to. We love the band 2020. I'm not as well versed as Steven is on them, but those first two records are absolute masterpieces in my book. Mm-hmm. If you can pick them up, if you can find this CD. Now, I haven't went out and checked streaming services. I don't know if you can stream this or not. But if you like what we said, maybe you may want to check this out if you like Power Pop.
I think Steve Allen, when that CD came out, I think that he told me that like within a certain amount of period that CD has to be out, then it's going to be added to Apple iTunes. And this was when the CD came out. Okay. So it actually may be available to be streamed. But you could probably go on YouTube and just type in 2020 Lookout or 2020 Yellow Pills and listen to a couple songs.
Yeah.
Definitely worth your time.
But either way, I would recommend picking up these first 2 records. I don't know if you can find them out in the wild on vinyl. I picked mine. I was looking for them tonight. I've got both of those records. But I'll be damned. It's like when I go to look for them and I'm in the bins, for some reason I couldn't find them, but I know they're here. But go ahead. What?
Couple releases that I want to mention.
Oh yeah, please do.
That are 2020 related. Number one, there's a brand spanking new. In fact, of course, I should have pulled it out here. There's a brand spanking new Ransom and the Subset album coming out, and that album features his cover of Fast Car, which is off of Sex Trap album, and it features Ron Flint on it. So they do a duet on it. So the Ransom and the Subset album, which comes out in March. It's a fantastic album. Oh, Lordy, it's a fantastic album. And like I said, Ron Flint guests on his cover of a 2020 song. I don't know if it's the same version, but there's also an album that came out a couple years ago that I recommend to anybody called Action Now. Let me see what the full title is. It is called Action Now 2020 Re-Envisioned. And it's a tribute to 2020. So it's got like the Pop Dudes, which features John Borak. It's got Chris Church. It's got Plastic Soul, and they're all doing 2020 covers. And so I recommend anybody go check that out as well. It's on the Future Man Records label, and I know that there were physical copies available. I tried to find my copy. I pulled it out for this video, and of course, I'm missing that and my other Ron Flint. I'll find them as soon as the video's over. It happens.
That's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But but so if you love 2020, if you've already got everything I showed you, then Action Now 2020 Re-Envisioned is a great tribute album to get because it revisits a lot of the great. Now, Ransom and the Subset does Fast Car on that compilation, so I'm not 100% sure if it's the version with Ron Flint or not. So fantastic stuff.
Fantastic. And I put your link to your YouTube channel. Anybody who's watching or follow me, please subscribe to Steven. Like you said, a lot of great content, a lot of great interviews. He's the CD junkie, for crying out loud. So check out his channel. I'm sure there's something for everyone. Since I have you on here and we're going to wind this up, is there anything coming up that you want to promote while we've got some people here still? Anything coming up?
My channel, obviously, but I mean, I've got tons of videos coming up. This whole shorts thing has taken over everyone else. So I'm trying to figure out, do I want to get more into shorts? But I've got videos coming up, like I said, on Gene Loves Jezebel and the Motors. Motors and Bram Tchaikovsky are going to be the same video. And Spirit Destiny and Buzzcocks. I'm going to be doing all the Buzzcocks, including solo stuff. And there's Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
Rob Secure Music. Yeah, always better.
Yeah, Robert S. is
he
is a wonderful man. He knows his stuff. But the thing I want to promote, most of all, Robert S. is part of this. You're part of this. I don't want to sound arrogant and say that I'm part of this, but I am part of this. Is support the channels that provide a different kind of content. I love the Beatles and I love a whole lot of bands, but there's so many great people out there that cover that music, the Beatles and stuff. Great channels, Matthew Street, Joe Mayo, Beatle Brad, Marv, all these people cover Beatles stuff perfectly. So I don't want to talk about the Beatles. I don't want to talk about Led Zeppelin or the Stones. I don't want to talk about jazz. I want to talk about 2020. I want to talk about Gene Loves Jezebel, stuff that a lot of people don't. I've got two stacks of Chris de Burgh CDs that I'm still contemplating. Christopher Cross I've got.
Who's talking Christopher Cross or Chris de Burgh, for crying out loud?
See, that's the thing. I put so much time and effort into these things and I don't get a lot of views. Is it because of me or is it because of the content? Who
It's
knows?
not you, it's the content. There's only a so limited 20.
Yeah.
20 is just a.
Exactly.
But that's what we try to do, Stephen. We try to turn people on to stuff
yeah.
that needs more love. You know,
Yeah,
we don't want to
exactly.
see 2020 get swept by and forgotten, as great as it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You and I can't be the only ones on the planet that think it's this great. So
Oh,
we
no,
just want
no.
to spread the love, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So
So you have to do what you do, you know.
yeah. So yeah, I'm always going to do what I do regardless of how many subs I get or whatever. But you know, I do want more subs, and it's not for my own ego. It's because if I go to you know, an artist and say, "Hey, can I interview this artist? He's got a new album coming out," and the label says, "Oh no, he's only got so many subs." No, we want to talk to somebody who's got this many subs.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, they don't want to waste their time on, you know, some guy who gets 300 views or something for an interview. They want to do it for somebody who gets 1,000 views for an interview, you know? Yeah. I believe that, Rich. People do like their comfort zone.
I believe that too. These people you appeal are
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So, but I mean, that's why but then I get people like Gilbert O'Sullivan. I mean, I put up, one of the things I put up, if anybody cares, on my channel, I just put a sizzle reel up promoting the new Gilbert O'Sullivan tour. And it's like 2.5 minutes, and it's got the tour dates. It's got, sound bites from like, you know, 7 or 8 songs, including stuff off his new album. I do that, because, you know, I get asked to do that. And I'm a huge Gilbert fan. I've interviewed Gilbert O'Sullivan 3 or 4 times. And, you know, and it's an honor that his family is saying, like, this is fantastic. You know, we want to share this, you know, and, you know, that's why I do it, you know, for the artists and for the people that are looking for something different. And I know that that's why you do it. And Robert S., Rob Scure Music right there. He does the same thing, you know.
Yeah, like with the shorts. I know we're on a tangent, but the shorts is where I'll throw out something that's popular. Not in my content, but, you know, I'll throw up Led Zeppelin. I'm really just throwing them up there to see if they stick.
Yeah.
And if it takes off, that does open my channel up to more people that can look at the real content. So, you know, some people don't like the vinyl community are a funny bunch because a lot of them don't like the shorts, but they need to embrace it if they want to spread the word. I think shorts are easy to do. It depends upon what you're doing, but I don't know. I think if you're trying to build your channel, and like you said, if you're trying to get interviews, you want eyes on your channel. You want these people to go, whoa, Stephen SCHNEE, look at that. Well, we can reach a lot of people through him, you know?
Yeah.
A lot better for getting interviews. Yeah.
Yeah. See, and like I said, it's not, I'm never going to make money on my channel because I always feature sound bites. So that it's copyrighted material that I'm allowed to use. And, you know, it's really about, I'm one of those guys who still believes that you should promote or you know, that I want to promote these artists. There are artists that broke up 40 years ago that I'm still promoting.
I do the same thing.
Yeah. You know, Blanket of Secrecy, Yachts. You know, these are bands that like long forgotten, but they still deserve attention. And, you know, I think people go, oh, I used to like that band. What do you mean used to?
You can still like them. What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Rob, I put up a video on the band Taste. Not many people care. Very few views. I'll keep doing it though. See, but if you like this band and you're passionate about it, that's all that matters. And I mean, you put it out there, someone's going to watch it. It's going to get out there, you know?
We turned this chat about 2020 into over an hour. And that's because we're both extremely passionate about it. I mean, we talked about a lot of other stuff in there too. Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah, you know, and that's what music does. It inspires. And I'm a CD guy. I spent the first 30 years of my life collecting vinyl. Then the next 30 years of my life collecting CDs. I'm not going to go back to vinyl, especially when I could buy a 3 CD box set for $20 or $25. And if I were to buy those 3 albums individually,
it would cost
plus all the B-sides and stuff like that, it would cost $150. Mm-hmm. So, I'm saving $120. A new box set. If you wanted to buy all the all 4 of the Bob Mould box sets on vinyl, you could buy the one CD thing that has 19 CDs in it, or however many it is. You can buy that. You could spend $125 and get 19 CDs of Bob Mould, or you can buy 4 separate box sets and spend $500 to get the same exact content on vinyl instead of CD. I think I'd rather save $375, $400 and just buy the CDs.
Well, like Mazzy always says, it's all about the music. It's really not so much the medium.
Yeah.
Just you're enjoying the music. And, if I'm buying CDs, I'm not a streamer, kids. I don't stream. I can buy a lot more. I can get a lot more bang for my buck buying used CDs or whatever. Just saying. It's all going to come back around. Quote me, kids. I've said this before. Buy low, buy low, buy low is what I always say.
I've been saying all along that it's the music. It's not the format. And in fact, I counted on live on one of your streams. Somebody said, well, I looked at your channel, but all you do is talk about CDs. And it's like, no, I talk about music. I don't sit here and go like, oh, look at the CD. It is a plastic and it's in a case and whatever. No, I'm saying, check out this song, check out that song, check out that song, So, but that's me.
Yeah. Everybody's got their thing.
Yeah.
When it comes down to it, it's all about the music and turning people on to things they haven't heard before.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what that's what our job is.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
That's what it's become. But it's fun. It's a good hobby. But there you go. Is there anything else you need to I think we've done it. This has been a great discussion. We've hit all kinds of topics.
Yeah, and I can't believe it's been an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's been good. We'll have to do another one.
Yeah.
There's so many bands that we could cover. I mean, it's not like we're going to run out of anything,
Yeah. I will be taping a show on Monday with Matthew Street, and we'll be talking about Ringo the Lost Years. So I am going to be doing
that'll be good.
And Ringo the Lost Years is basically the stuff he released on like Atlantic Records, basically from like Rotogravure to Stop and Smell the Roses. So we're going to be talking about those. But we'll throw other stuff in there as well. But but definitely keep an eye out for our videos and support your favorite YouTube people. I'm not saying I'm anybody's favorite, but I'm saying support the people because sometimes we don't know if anybody's actually listening.
Yeah. Well, people have short attention spans.
Yeah, but I appreciate everybody who commented today, even though I don't have my contacts in, so I wasn't able to read them.
It's all right. It's all good.
So.
All right, cool.
But that's it for me. I apologize for dominating, like usual.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. So. But Rich, I think he saves these shows, right? You save these live shows?
Oh, these are always up. The only thing that I get rid of is if I do we can talk about this real quick. I did the New Wave show today. Well, it went over 2 hours and YouTube went in and put the kibosh on it.
Oh, okay. That's why I make sure that Ski Lodge is only 90 minutes every episode.
Well, I hadn't had that happen to me before. Some of the people in chat were in that and they went, holy crap, you just got terminated. And then we waited it out because they said, oh, well, wait 3 minutes. You'll come back up.
Yeah.
Well, we waited. I came back up and it took me down again. So I just said, screw it.
Well, okay. It took you down again because you started playing the music again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're after that first time, it just say goodbye because because now it's seeing you. It's focusing on you. That's why I talk over things.
Yeah, but I heard someone was mentioning at another show, Vinyl Archivist.
Yeah, Patrick, great guy.
Okay. same thing. After 2 hours, that's what they do.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily, they say it's copyright, but it's not necessarily copyright. It's just you go beyond 2 hours. I don't get it, but I just won't go over 2 hours again.
Yeah.
Because I told you, Stephen, what I do is I make the show in advance.
Yeah.
I throw it up on YouTube and save it in a private mode. They scan all the content. I don't publish it, and it'll tell me if something's going to get a strike or not.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Nothing, if it gets a strike, I go down and re-edit it and throw it back up again.
Yeah.
Instead of doing all the tracks individually.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But I don't know. It could have been that Thomas Dolby song that got me, but I don't know if I don't know. I had to do a couple of re-edits for today's show, so I can't remember now. It all runs together. Yeah, but I didn't know the 2 hour thing because I'd never. Oh, well.
Yeah.
So
okay.
All right.
Thank
well,
you,
everybody. Yeah. Thanks,
you,
everybody, for showing up. Steve SCHNEE, thanks for coming and talking about 2020.
Thank you for inviting me.
Hopefully we can turn some people onto this band.
And are we going to do this again next month?
I know we have the Beat coming up.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the Beat, Paul Collins Beat, next month. Mm-hmm. But Grant has a lot of great shows on his channel. So if this is the first time you're watching Grant, definitely, April Wine 2020. I
love April Wine.
I'm going to do a video on Foreigner. I'm going to do a video on Christopher Cross. Mm-hmm. People I love what I love, and I'm not, no guilty pleasures. But again, I have to stop talking or else we're going to go for another hour.
We think that maybe it was the spy balloon that cut me off. That could be it.
Rich, I think you're on to something special there. Oh yeah. If you played a Sadaka New Wave song, yeah, I got pulled off.
Did you, for what?
Laughter in the Rain. But
really?
I've been really lucky. Really, really lucky lately. I shouldn't have said that because I think probably, if anybody loves 60s Sunshine pop and lounge music and pop vocal and easy listening, tune in to my channel, 6 p.m. on every Tuesday night, 6 p.m. Pacific for Ski Lodge, or This is Ski Lodge, where I play my radio show that's up on Mixcloud right now. And I play it on Tuesday nights. And a lot of people, just like everyone here, they just get together and they talk about stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm in charge of that show, so I monitor the chat room, but I haven't. Actually, I played Tom Jones many times and I didn't get flagged yet.
I did throw up something, one of my new wave shows or whatever. It was a Flock of Seagulls track, and it got a copyright strike. So I had to pull it down and re-edit it. But I did another show, the Today Show. I ran on it. It didn't get a strike. It's almost like certain tracks get strikes. I don't understand. You think it would be the whole band?
I think it's cranky bots.
You think it's just cranky bots?
Yeah, I think that if they're going along and they've had their coffee and their donuts or whatever, they're just like going through just being bots. Like, hey, what's up? Oh yeah, hey, what's up? But then something, they woke up and maybe they crapped their pants or something. And so they're in a bad mood. So they're going, I'm going to zap everybody I can.
It could be. It's just funny that I came back, like they said, after 3 minutes, came back up, and then I was on for a minute and then bam, off again. It's weird.
Yeah. See, whatever you do, if you get dinged, do not go back up with music again, because then you're just going to get dinged again. Mm. Doesn't matter. It never, ever fails, because now they're focusing on you.
Right.
So
it's weird. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Oh, well. All right, kids. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for leaving a comment. Please leave a like while you still can. And Stephen SCHNEE, we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, we'll see you. Thank you, everybody.
All right. See you, everybody. Good night.